So like Moses, McKenzie Wren has some Dvarim to share with you, some words. A story about her search for the promised land. And while she is not the 120 years that Moses is noted to be as he gives his speech to the Israelites, she does have some thoughts to share as she looks back over the length of days of her days as a midwife, educator, herbalist, ranger, among other things. So listen up, y'all. That's how Southerners say Shema, or rather, Shema, y'all. McKenzie Wren, Deutoronomy.
Thanks, y'all. But because I get to hang out with a bunch of musicians, I am going to do a little bit of video magic. I'm going to switch my screen, and I have an in-house band to give you the introduction, which has nothing to do with my story. So, but hold the upbeat energy as you are listening. Okay, so let's see how this works and whether you hopefully can hear these fabulous men. All right, let's see. All right.
Cheers.
And go. Yay, all right. That, and for folks who don't know and who are curious, Devin was playing a melodica, which is like a giant, what is it? A giant, I don't know what it is. It's a giant playing thing. And he didn't understand why he couldn't play it in the car when they came home from Savannah. But that has nothing, absolutely nothing to do. Yeah, it's a portable accordion. Thank you, Will Robertson, always having the right instrument name. So, all right, my story. I was not born in Atlanta, but I've actually had a relationship with it.
McKenzie, all of a sudden, your sound went very low.
Okay, nothing changed on my end. So let me start over then. Can you hear me now? No? Can you hear me now? No?
I'm gonna try my computer.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you, somebody, because I can't sit. All right. So I'm going to start it from the beginning and interrupt me again if you need to, yeah? So, as I said, I was not born in Atlanta, but I've had a relationship with it for the past 45 years. In all this time of coming and going and being here, I never thought of it as home, and certainly not the promised land, actually until very recently. So my dad did his own form of wandering for about 40 years, which meant we moved a lot when I was a child. And when I went to college, I didn't feel like I had any home. I had no sense of place. I felt like I had no roots. And so after college, I embarked on my own years of wandering. So I headed out to Oregon, where I thought I might stay. And I went to Wyoming, where I thought I might stay. And I went to Alaska, where I actually knew that I wouldn't stay. And then I went down to Texas, where I did stay for a little while. I fell in love with the West, especially with Wyoming, where I lived at the foot of the Tetons. I could see them out the window of my yurt, and I really wanted to make it home. I had a job, I had friends, the natural beauty was unrivaled, and I thought, this is it, this is my promised land. But that winter was the hardest winter of my life. I got fired from my job. I had to deal with an unwanted pregnancy.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Everyone's having trouble, and Josh said mute and unmute.
Okay. Mute and unmute.
McKenzie, all I want to say is take your time. Don't stress about it. And we can bring Brad on screen and make him talk while you figure it out.
So what was happening? Can you hear me now?
It's just very quiet.
Yeah, my
Right.
volume all the way up.
Well, it'd be your mic volume.
Yeah. take a deep breath. And everybody do that too. And Brad, talk, say something. Oh, wait, look. Woo, here we go. All right, I got it, right? You can hear me now? Yay! And there was great exultation.
The promised land of sound.
Oh my God. So I'm going to assume that nobody has heard anything, and I should start over. Is that correct? Josh and Brett? Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
All right, because the promised land, it's a journey, right? So here we go. But I'm so animated. Well, it's good to know that I'm animated. All right, here we go, folks. Back to Deuteronomy and some words to share. So, I was not born in Atlanta, but I've had a relationship with it for the past 45 years. And in all of this time of coming and going and being here, I have never thought of it as home. Never. And I've certainly never thought of it as my promised land. Until recently. So my dad did his own kind of wandering for 40 years, which meant that we moved a lot when I was a child. And when I went to college, I didn't go leaving feeling like I was leaving home or that there was a place and that I had any sense of roots. And so that kicked off my own years of wandering. And so after college, I went west to Oregon, where I thought I might stay. And then I went to Wyoming, where I thought I might stay. And to Alaska, where I knew that I wouldn't stay. And then down to Texas, where I actually did stay for a little while. But I fell in love with the West, especially with Wyoming, where I lived at the foot of the Tetons. I could see them out the window of my yurt. They were breathtaking. And I wanted to make this place home. I had a job, I had friends, the natural beauty was unrivaled. But that winter was the hardest winter of my life. I got fired from my job. I had to deal with an unwanted pregnancy, and I even broke my ankle. Fell right out of my Birkenstocks on the way to the bathhouse. Yep, just slipped right out of them, wound up with 2 plates and some screws. I can still feel them to this day. And that made it really hard to drive my stick shift car and live in a yurt with no running water. But I made it through the winter. But when I hurt my back on doing another job that I'd managed to cobble together, I hurt my back lifting a log during the most glorious meadow full of larkspurs. I realized Wyoming was kicking my ass and it was not my promised land, and I had to leave. That was it. So I went back to Portland. I loved Portland in so many ways. The changing sky, the access to the mountains, lots of people wearing flannels and Birkenstocks and hairy legs. My people, loved them all. But other adventures called, and I eventually ended up in El Paso, which is an amazingly complicated city and so full of contradictions. It's beautiful, it's harsh, there's painful, painful poverty. And then there's all the contradictions that happen around the border. Not quite as bad as it is today when I was there, but I feel like it's always been a place of contradiction. I loved the way that the Franklin Mountains loomed over the city, and they're the tail end of the Rockies. I loved the way that they were snow-dusted in the winter. I loved the hot smell of onions and peppers in the field. I loved the pecan groves, and I loved living a bilingual life. And I was also in love. So maybe this was home. Maybe this place was my own promised land. But no, it wasn't. Not for my partner, and nor ultimately for me, for a variety of reasons. So when it was time for us to go, we thought we would give Austin a try. Great music, had a job opportunity. We got there, I loved it. We put our belongings in storage with full plan to come back. This was gonna be our place. We could see it. So we headed back to Atlanta to get married because that's where my mom had been all the way since 76 when we moved there. But because life is weird and plans happen when you're not planning them, we ended up staying in Atlanta through what ended up being a very short trial marriage. So when we got divorced, it made sense that I stay in Atlanta until I got things sorted out. But it was my intention to head back west. I was ready to get back to the big sky country with the mountains, the saguaro, the pungent smells of sage and creosote when it rains. But then I met this guy, and though a San Franciscan at heart, he had fled from there in order to start his own new life. And in fact, 21 years ago today, on Simchat Torah, we got married. Mazel tov to us. So his career, a baby on the way, and my mom in town provided no reason to leave Atlanta. And so here we still are. But I have always thought about leaving. For the past 21 years, I have asked myself, why are we here? Why are we still here? And even though I've always celebrated my life here in Atlanta, the fact that it's happening here in Atlanta has always bothered me. Atlanta as a place doesn't make my heart sing. It never has. And I still yearn for the wide, open, beautiful, cold spaces, places. Reuben and I have talked over the whole 21 years about where we might want to move after the kids have grown and flown. And it's been an ongoing conversation. So when COVID changed the way that work happened, and because the summer in Atlanta was making me truly miserable, it was time to revisit the idea of leaving. And so we started taking scouting trips to Western North Carolina to see about where we might want to find our new home. So on the first weekend in August, Reuben and I were up in Asheville scouting out the possibility of moving. We were driving around, marveling at the beauty of the mountains, of the sky, of the fact that there were actually bears, real live bears, 3 of them, a mom and their babies, frolicking in the front yard in Asheville. And we were seriously considering that what it might be like to move there. We were serious enough that we stopped by the synagogue to visit it, even though, like ours, it was shuttered. There wasn't even a gay Ann sitting in the synagogue. It was just shuttered. But we got a little flyer, and we vowed that we would check out the synagogue. So we drove around different neighborhoods. We read about the other synagogues. We went for bike rides. We ate awesome food. And we thought, hey, I can feel it. I can see it. This looks like it. We could make this happen. And we discussed the possibilities all the way home. So we got home that Sunday afternoon and said hello to the dog and the kid, and had no sooner settled in when the phone rang. And it sent us spiraling into a nightmare. And I think most of you know at this point that my mom was killed in a car accident that same Sunday afternoon, August 2nd. So, death opens up a pathway of things that are so foreign. Death immerses you into the daily minutia of someone's life, and especially when it's a life that they did not intend to leave the last time that they walked out the door. Death leaves things like plants, food in the refrigerator, dishes in the sink, and it means walking through someone's innermost secrets and their private possessions. So that month of August was a total blur. And all of it was happening in this ongoing pandemic, which just made and makes all of the normal rituals, like this one, just so much more difficult. But we got through it. We're still getting through it, because that's what you do. But I will tell you, we could not have gotten through it without our community, without y'all. Y'all brought us food, flowers, you brought us wine, a lot of wine. The board actually brought me a case of wine. I'm okay, don't worry. Brought me art supplies. You weeded my garden and you walked our dog. And you even brought me a rose quartz comfort pig. Seriously, some of y'all know Rosetta. Stephanie Schreig delivered her to me. And 2 other people in the community have been blessed with a visit by Rosetta, the rose quartz comfort pig. I'm happy to report that Rosetta will actually be going home soon until the next person needs her services. On Erev Rosh Hashanah, Darcy Cody delivered a challah because she heard me say that I had planned to make one and wasn't going to get to it. She went out of her way to bring us a homemade challah. That's love and community. And that's what home feels like. So I've been back in Atlanta longer than I was gone. The majority of my life has now been spent here in Atlanta. I still don't love it. I don't love it itself. I don't love the heat or the traffic, the lack of mountains, real mountains, and the fact that the river isn't part of the city, and because it's Georgia, whatever, Georgia. I always envisioned my promised land as a different kind of place, a place with extraordinary mountains and rivers, oceans and stars. But I actually know now that home, the promised land, it's actually not the place. It's the people. And it's the place where there are people who love you. So in the promised land, there is community, and there is everything that you need. And sometimes the promised land is exactly where you are.